recording.
fun.
All right, it is now 4:30 p.m. and we're going to call the meeting an emergency meeting of the Board of Health to order on Monday, what is it, December what?
14.
Monday, December 14th, 2021. May we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is it Tuesday? Tuesday. See, it's been a crazy afternoon. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you to our members who could make it in their schedules, with their families, employment, and whatnot, for being able to attend this emergency meeting of the Board of Health on Tuesday the 14th, beginning at 4:30 p.m. I thank you all of you, for taking time out of your lives to be able to come here in such short notice. It speaks volumes about your dedication to what we do. With that, we were contacted today by the health agent and Thad King, our interim superintendent of schools, due to the fact that we have had a high recommendation from DESE due to a large COVID outbreak at the high school only proportionately versus our other schools in town. And with that, I'm going to temporarily turn it over to the health agent, who I guess will then turn it over to Mr. King.
Yep, in being contacted by the superintendent, I guess we've had a large spike in active COVID cases. The superintendent was in consultation with the Department of Secondary and Elementary Education, and they have some recommendations, and we're here to hear the recommendations and see if the Board of Health is in concurrence or not. So with that,
Oh, and just a brief disclosure, I am recording for the town hall to have it, as they did not have time to set up any cameras or anything on such short notice, so we are recording, just so everybody knows. And with that, Mr. King.
Sure, thank you, and thank you guys to getting together so quickly and doing this today. So I'm going to give you just a short recap. So if you'll recall, back around Veterans Day, we closed the district down for COVID concerns prior to Veterans Day to get kind of a longer weekend than what we already had, in hopes to sort of abate some COVID issues that we've had throughout the buildings, most specifically at the high school. That lasted for about a week, I'm going to say, at which point numbers started slowly creeping up again. I've been in constant communication with the Department of Education relative to this, and even that particular closure was in consultation with the Department of Education. The current situation is at the high school, where beginning yesterday the numbers really started to rise. So I believe going into yesterday, I believe the high school was around just short of 30 active cases, positive cases at the high school. Yesterday, before I would say 8:30, we had an additional 15 positive cases. By the end of the day, we had 21 additional cases. So that prompted me clearly to put in some calls and start working with the Department of Education a little bit more closely. Once again, we have a dedicated contact who we communicate with. I spoke with Mr. Hebert as well a couple of times, just to keep him informed of what was going on at the school. That also included, yesterday we had 100, and you heard that number correctly, we had 100 test and stays that we performed in the building as well. We had, and we still have, 36 students in quarantine. So
is that for clarification at the high school level, sir?
This is just the high school.
Thank you.
I want to be really clear, this is only high school numbers. So those numbers were pretty drastic for us. We decided with the Department of Education they would work with us to send us help in terms of testing all remaining students that were in the building. So any student who was not quarantined or currently actively COVID. So at the end of the day yesterday, we had approximately 46 positive COVID cases at the high school in the 36 quarantines. So I met a DESE official last night, actually, after work, to pick up tests. We didn't have enough tests, so we decided, like I said, we would test all students.
Where did you have to go for this, sir?
That was just in Westford. So I left here yesterday, went to Westford to meet a DESE official to pick up additional Binax-Snell tests, so that we would have sufficient tests, not just to test the high school, but also to make sure that we had enough left in the district as well for the other buildings, because of course those are still happening as well. So we met this morning at about 6:45 to set up the gym. They sent the 8 nurses as promised. We sent out a communication to families last night about this situation. We then tested a total of 157 students at the high school today, which is about 20 short of what the remaining students who were not either already positive or in quarantine. So there was about 20 students absent, if you will, for various reasons. Some of those reasons, we asked families if they were not going to consent to test, to please maybe keep your student home for the day, so that we can get a handle on this. And then we also had students who were at home who were symptomatic and their families chose not to send.
Were these tests nasal swab?
They were nasal swabs, the Binax Now
And
rapid tests.
people are against having their children tested for a simple nasal swab.
We don't have consents for every child, that's correct. So,
Very let down by that.
after the 157 students tested today, we had an additional 10 positive cases, which then of course leads to additional test and stays due to close contacts. We got an additional call later in the day from a family that kept their child home that was symptomatic. They tested at home. That added another case, so that brought us to 11 for the day. So just to give you an idea, that's nearly 100 students that are either positive or in quarantine. So they're not even coming to the buildings. We have an enrollment of 262 students total. If you have 100 that are currently positive or in quarantine, approximately, it's really around 92, 93. We have 3 that we're still awaiting PCR results that were already out. And we have, after today, we probably have approximately 120 test and stays tomorrow if we were to come to school. And those are 7 days. So the test and stay protocol is you were tested 7 days. That's not 7 calendar days, that's 7 school days.
So it's a slow day, huh?
Yeah, slow days. So that's 200 of our students, 200
Crazy.
200 students out of 262 that are in one form or fashion in the COVID protocol. The good news is we did also test teachers today. We did not have any additional positive cases, although there are a few positive cases at the high school prior to today.
Say that again?
We did not have any positive teacher or faculty, let me say faculty cases today. However, we do have a couple, I believe, positive cases currently in that building for staff and faculty. Across the district right now, we have 5 or 6 positive faculty members.
Prior, but not today.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Nothing added today with faculty. So we are now down to having approximately 165 students left in the building that are not either, like I said, positive and or in quarantine. About 120 of those would be in test and stay. That probably takes us to, it takes the nurses probably at least until noon to get that done. So you can imagine what that looks
And
like.
that's
in
8
terms of-
nurses, you said.
Well, we won't have the 8 nurses tomorrow. We're back to normal. So this was an effort through DESE today
Oh,
to
boy.
just let's see what let's get everybody tested and see where we're at. You know, we had students today, as an example, who were negative yesterday in the test and stay protocol and popped positive today. So, you know, that was a scenario. We had refusals today, some of whom were close contacts to someone who tested positive today. I can name, I know of at least one that refused to be tested after having been identified as a close contact. So at this point, really in consultation with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, you know, I have been, like I say, in constant communication. We've come to the conclusion that really at this point we've done everything we could do. We've been very measured in our approach to how we would deal with this. The recommendation at this point from both myself and the Department of Education is to quarantine just the high school and send them into remote for really health and safety measures at this point in the building until such time as the winter break is over. So they would return on, I believe it's January 3rd.
So the very first day that school would resume after the winter break, high school students, for clarification, will be returning
January
to
3rd.
And this is not a permanent thing. This
Absolutely
is just
not.
a temporary stopgap to get the numbers down for the
Absolutely.
public to know.
And just as an aside, the question I know will come up is, what about the middle school? It's in the same physical building. 4 positive cases in the middle school. So for whatever is going on with the high school students, it's not moving over to the middle school side. So the middle school would stay in the building and continue with their learning. We would not close the whole building. We are actually just closing the high school portion. And so for those of you not overly familiar with the high school and middle school, even though they occupy the same building, there's very, very little crossover between students, the way that it's physically run. We have some opportunity in the cafeteria, a little bit, but in terms of occupying the same space at the same time, it's very limited.
That's clearly a good thing right now.
So just as well today, just a little bit about how we ran the tests. It was in the gymnasium. We, just so you know, just in terms of health and safety, thankfully we had all of the ventilation systems done, including the gym last year. We turned up the ventilation while the testing was going on, so we ran the freshman class through, sophomore class, etc. So we turned up the ventilation the entire time. Once the testing was completed, we put in our fogging boxes that I know Garrett knows about. We turned those up we turned off the fans after about 45 minutes. We then put in the foggers, fogged the gym, ventilated again, and then reopened the gym just so that the gym could be used. So at any rate, that is my request at this point, is to get your support, a vote of support around sort of closing the high school in terms of just not the Murdoch building, but just the high school, sending those students remote in terms of, in the hopes of abating further COVID spread at this time.
So I have a question for you,
Yes, sir.
just for clarification, because you know what happens when we assume. Sports programs. Will winter sports during this temporary short period of closure through the holidays, you have boys varsity basketball, girls varsity basketball, indoor track and whatnot, are winter sports going to be temporarily disabled during this, or will they still be able to practice?
No, we will suspend all activities relative to the high school.
I feel bad for the kids.
Yeah.
That being said, have you talked with Ms. Whitaker, your athletic director, to know if there's a chance these children will be able to possibly make these games up? I know it's very premature, that's why I was just asking.
I'll be honest, the communication of this particular scenario has been limited with
Sure.
anyone. We know how things go and getting out, even if you're just talking hypothetical. So at this point, I've not had a conversation
Okay.
with Ms. Whitaker, just because I didn't want to take the risk of...
Sure, I was just concerned that due
Absolutely.
to what our young, impressionable, developing
Yeah.
teenagers went through, that I was very concerned that they've lost so much in the
Absolutely.
last academic year and a half in terms of that interaction. I'm just concerned, and I would really make a plea to Ms. Whitaker to try to see if she can work with other schools to make these games up for the children's dedication and their mental health and wellness.
Absolutely, and I'll just add that there are a number of students that are, in this 56, 57 positive cases that I'm not even sure if we wanted to, that we would be able to. hold
Sure,
games,
be able
be
to field
honest,
teams.
due to the number of students that participate in athletics that are currently positive. So,
Thank you. Tina, you had a question, obviously. Go ahead.
Well, to piggyback, I guess, on your question in regards to the sports, I know, I'm not quite sure exactly on basketball right at this moment, but I know in the past, they've, sometimes when they could not field or could not do, combine a team, they would have middle school students and or varsity students combine. So I guess where middle school is not being shut down or suspended, do you know if there is any teams that have a combined middle school and or high school student, and that would affect them?
it's a great question.
I would hate to have them kind of miss out,
Yeah,
but then again, I understand high schoolers being,
yeah. I would currently allow, or, again, this is high school,
How
very
would
high school
we
specific, so
go-
at this point,
right?
it would be the high school specific teams. There shouldn't really be, but you know how it works, any high schoolers participating on a middle school team.
Right, but sometimes
If there
we pull
were,
those
I
middle
would not
schoolers
allow
up.
them. We do pull middle schoolers up, but without high schooler, really, there's not gonna be any high school kids there to also be a part of that team, so right now.
So while the high school
Cancel.
kids are out, just for clarification,
Yep.
as superintendent, the gym, obviously physically located in the high school, are middle school students still going to be allowed to use the gym in the high school while the highly more COVID positive upperclassmen are out?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The gym will be open.
Just one
So,
clarification. in
Specifically
case
for
the
middle
public
school
has a
sports,
question.
I would support. I do not support having the high school sports there. I know there's a couple of middle school students, possibly. I don't actually know the rosters. Students would practice possibly with their middle school teams, assuming that we're fielding those at this time.
And can I ask another question?
Please.
If I could?
Yes.
I'm not quite sure exactly. My girls are just freshmen this year, so they were not in high school last year. But I guess I remember last year, the high school closing around COVID time. And I don't remember exactly when, but I know them going to be going remote only
Was it
for
like
a period of time.
late March of 2020, I think?
I don't remember
Yeah, it was
exactly.
like right around March 19th or 20th.
But
Yep.
I'm curious to know and to see if there's any kind of question whether or not there is any relation or something that we can connect, like, because if it's a certain period of time, if it happens to be the high school only, is there something that we can kind of correlate or something? You know, do you understand where I'm getting
I
at?
think I do, yeah, from the
Because I don't know if, I want to say that we closed the high school because it was scheduling, because of teachers. But if it has to do with something else, perhaps we need to look into this further, I guess,
Well-
is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah,
Because
actually-
if it seems to be a pattern, is what I'm trying to get at.
Actually, let me flip it a little bit for last year, because I think you're referencing the year prior, actually. So if we back up in
Yeah,
time.
the last academic year,
This is our
March of
third- This is our
2020.
third academic year we're doing this.
Right.
So
So last
sorry.
year specifically, Ms. Santos, we were just actually returning because we were fixing all the ventilation in all the buildings. So if you recall,
I know at
we
one
sort of
time.
had that stagger, we were fully remote. And then Memorial opened first for the hybrid. We always had our at-risk populations in the buildings, but we opened Memorial first because their ventilation was the easiest to fix. And then the high school / middle school opened later, which was honestly around December. So we weren't even in the buildings yet this time last year because we had just gotten that ventilation system
Right.
upgraded. So we did have times last year. It was early. We were still trying to learn how to deal with this. Last year, early on, we would sort of send a building remote because we didn't know what we were dealing with, I'm going to be honest. And so then what we learned over time with COVID was that we could start getting down to single classrooms. Sometimes we had grade level issues, and that was really more about adults than it was children. And quite frankly, this year is so much different than last year. Last year was about adults. We had very few children who were positive last year. It was really pretty rare, but why we closed most of the time, especially classrooms, was the adult ended up positive or had a close contact at home, a child or a spouse or a significant other. And so that's what forced us oftentimes into a closure situation. This year we've seen very little with adults, and it's really transitioned to our students. And so, in terms of kind of what I see from year to year, that's been a big difference. But last year we would have just now been returning to opening that building. I think it was late November, early December, but that's
And
pure memory.
one variable I think we all know here that easily comes into play, just from a simple common sense standpoint, is that the middle school students have less association with their friends after school than for, say, high school students, because a lot of high school students have driver's licenses,
Absolutely.
and they can commute to see their friends and visit with their friends after school.
Yeah.
And you could even be in a house where a parent comes home from work where there's no masking, and the parent may not even know they're positive, and it could come to the children, to the parents also, just like it could from kids to the parents. It goes both ways.
Well, two things, if I may. One, as you move up to the grade levels, we less and less travel as cohorts. So even in the middle school, we're still sort of traveling. I know that at the middle school, they have sort of that team aspect. So those kids are together a lot, moving from place to place. The high school, that really blows up outside of maybe freshmen, where they have seven classes in a day, seven sections in a day. And so those students are they're churning. So we can't, one of the things that we've looked at with the Department of Education is this specific to a classroom? And at the high school, unfortunately, it's just not possible.
Sure.
When we have Toy Town situation, where we are sending one classroom remote, where we have a high incidence in one classroom. And so what we'll do is send that room remote. We've done it once before. We did that around the same time we closed for that one, that Thursday, and we're actually doing it again this week. for one fifth grade classroom.
Yeah, you're going
Um,
from a much more controlled environment to
Absolutely.
a more fluid
But
environment.
the second piece I want to comment on, and I'm glad you said it, was about the back and forth to home. And I'm really sad to report this, but it's really an important piece. We have been informed by at least one family that a parent is now on a ventilator.
Oh, no.
As a possible result of their students having COVID. So I've investigated that a little bit with our nurses, because you just need to kind of really sort of test the veracity of that statement. And so the nurses actually believe that that was likely accurate, that this particular family member, parent, was the parent who came and picked up children who were positive at the building, was perfectly fine, and he's currently on a ventilator. And so, we have a responsibility to the health and safety of not just the students in this situation, but our families, I think, clearly as well. And right now, that's one that I'm personally carrying. And that's a difficult one to sort of hear.
Mhm.
And I know that was very hard on the nurses when they heard about it yesterday, and I think the building principal as well. And I mean, at the end of the day, education's great, but if we can't keep everybody safe, we're not doing things right. And so right now, it's incumbent on us, I believe, to keep our kids and our families in this community safe. So,
Which is why you wanted to come
That's why I'm
before the
here.
board.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes,
It
ma'am.
looks
Yeah,
like-
just keep
I
it brief
guess-
so the others can ask questions, please.
Yep,
Just so they can
absolutely.
too.
So looking at the calendar, it looks
Mhm.
like, so if you're looking are you looking to have the kids attend tomorrow and then go remote on Thursday until the remaining of the year, or just completely
we would go remote effective tomorrow.
effective? So,
Um,
so they would not return tomorrow? Is
Correct. The
that-
communication that I have drafted is that if they still have belongings, Chromebook, whatever they might still have at school,
Mhm.
that, assuming that they're not positive or in quarantine, that the principal will create a schedule to allow students to come in and pick up their belongings. Also, it allows our teachers, right now the way it's working, is that a teacher has one Zoom classroom set up. That's not practical in the situation that we're about to go to, so it also gives the teachers a day to create all their Zoom classrooms. And when I say that means, so what we will likely do is create a mirror of what their actual schedule is. So the teachers will be working tomorrow as well to create Zoom links that mirror their schedules. So the easiest thing to do is for students to transition is just simply say, log into that, whatever you have at 7:30, log into that teacher's Zoom link. So it'll allow everyone an opportunity to get into the building if it's reasonable to grab those things, and that would be in a very controlled situation.
So it would be
to
the
do that.
same schedule, like
Yep.
the 3 full days for the remainder of this week, and then the half days before school
I believe
vacation?
next week is all full days. I don't believe they're half days, but if you're looking at the school calendar, you would know.
I don't
better
have
than
the
I.
calendar
No,
in front of me,
They're
but I
actually
think
all
it
full
was
days next
a
week.
couple
if I'm
full
not
days,
mistaken.
and then maybe
Yeah.
a half day, I guess, on that Wednesday.
Yeah, so there would be whatever
Sometimes they're
the
half
school
days.
calendar is, that's what the Zooms, the
I
remote
see.
would look like as well, except for tomorrow.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
you're welcome.
Hey, Lionel, did you have anything? I thought you had nodded your head.
I was just wondering, are you gonna take the same precautions when and if the middle school starts climbing, their rate starts climbing on COVID?
I mean, it is a case-by-case scenario. Right now, to be honest with you, Toy Town is probably the next most extreme in terms of numbers of cases. I don't have their numbers in front of me, but they've stayed constant around 29 positive cases throughout. And so what happens is we get a student who is positive, and we track that for 5 to 10 days, depending. Somebody falls off, if you will, and somebody else picks up. So their numbers have stayed relatively constant. So in answer to your question, we'll monitor that, and DESE is aware of those things. They actually see our numbers as well. But if we need to, we would take appropriate action and for any of the buildings, quite frankly. I know there's questions around Toy Town today as well. But the way that we've addressed that is since it's more confined and controlled in terms of the way the students move, DESE has recommended to us and given permission to simply send that one classroom remote in terms of attenuating the issue. And the other piece is, we're not allowed, if you will, to go remote the way we did last year without DESE's permission. So you know, we're allowed to cancel school like a snow day, but I can't send kids remote. So traditionally, only kids in quarantine and or COVID positive are allowed to actually come in through the Zoom links and get credit for attendance. If for whatever, nobody else can. So in this particular instance, every child at the high school will be able to be in attendance, if you will, so long as they attend the Zoom link. So it'd be like just a regular day.
So again, for clarification for our members in the public, once again, this was recommended by DESE that you take these actions.
Yes, it was a joint recommendation. We worked together, and I want to be really clear. Like, you know, this is the responsibility of this role as well. And so, you know, I think if I had said to them I'm not on board with it, they would have agreed. But it was really a joint consultation. That, you know, for me, it's about our students and our community. You know, and trying to be safe for them.
Sure. Garrett, you got any questions?
You answered one of them. How's Memorial doing?
Memorial is a little, you know, each building's a little bit different in the way that kind of COVID is matriculating through. And so what we see at Memorial is fewer sort of documented positives within the building and fewer documented positives in general on average over this timeline. What we believe is that the parents of the younger children probably are less likely to do the nasal swabs just because they're little guys. And so what we see there is lower attendance rates. And we believe it's, you know, the children are probably symptomatic, they're sick, whatever. And I think, you know, we're really getting a lot of cooperation from our families and that they're keeping those students home. We do have a few students who do test and stay over there, but it's not like the other buildings. Right now what we're seeing is parents keeping those students home. So I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but they've been relatively low over the time.
Okay. Before I make a motion, my question that would kind of pertain to the motion is, are you looking for us to give you that we are backing the decision that you guys have come to as a joint group between DESE and the school district before we kind of formulate this together?
Yes.
And that's, okay, so nothing like us saying that you guys have to do this, you just want us to back what your guys
I
are
would like the
recommending?
support of the Board of Health. DESE, I'll be clear that we will be the only third school in the state to do this. And so
You took a lot of flack for having to cancel the Thanksgiving Day game,
Yeah.
and I think this is sadly in its own way justifying why that happened now, unfortunately.
you know, part of the job is making difficult decisions, and I'm, you know, we don't shrink from those. And so, you know, yeah, DESE wanted to make sure that the Board of Health is on board. If the Board of Health, I mean, you know, you're sort of have the power to close buildings due to health and safety, if you will. We're not actually closing a building. Is the sort of strange
It's a stopgap.
piece in here,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like,
a
we were-
stopgap measure.
Yeah, because we're not saying Murdoch is closed. We're
Yeah.
sending
The high
the
school
high school
portion of
students
it.
only. So it's a little bit different than saying Toy Town's closed due to health.
Well, like
It's
you
the whole
said,
building, so-
they're more fluid and not static. They're not in
Yeah.
cohorts.
So we're looking for support. I'm looking for support in this decision so that I can, you know, I want to convey that to the community. So I've written a statement just to say that it was with the support, and that's the word I used, of the Board of Health. And DESE is, you know, waiting on my phone call to them to say that I got the support of the Board of Health before we communicate anything out.
So I have just one more question in regards to the remote learning. My two girls are, you know, in like with electives, chorus and or like robotics and such. How would that remote, you know, work with those
It's a great question.
classes? And how are they going to be able to do that at home and or make those classes up?
Yeah, it's a great question.
I know with, you know, the short period of time, but again, coming back in January, if our numbers are not great and we need to extend this, we need to kind of look at it as a whole and so forth going forward. With those type of classes, you know, with the electives, especially with high school, that they are, you know, getting the electives and getting points in, or whatnot, subjects, etc. So we need to kind of think ahead.
Absolutely. So two things. One thing you said sparked me there for just a second that I want to address, and that is if we have to extend this after the break. So one thing is the reason for the very specific timeline and kind of where we are today is DESE will not approve beyond approximately 7 days. Around kind of quarantining standards. So you'll note that in Boston, so the two other schools that have done this in the state have been one in Boston Public Schools, I don't know which one, and I think one in Holyoke. Boston Public Schools decided to go in addition to what DESE said which is they grant the 7 days, but that includes the weekend, if you will, so it's 7 days of quarantine, but including the weekend, which gets us to next week. Boston actually chose to do 10 days, but those extra 5 days were not in support with DESE, and I believe those children were probably counted absent. I don't know that for a fact, but they're only giving us credit for those 7 days for this remote piece. So, the hope here, like, there's not a really good precedent to say we're going beyond this.
So as long as you have the remote learning available, you're still getting credit. These aren't counting as days extending into
In
the
this very
summer.
specific timeline until
That they've given
through
you.
next Wednesday.
Thank you for
If we were to
clarification.
extend beyond that, we would be in trouble, if you will,
Yep.
around attendance. So I just want to be really clear on that, Ms. Santos. Secondly, your question is really interesting because last year we didn't have a robotics. We specifically did not have a robotics class, and actually I don't believe our robotics class starts until second semester this year, so I believe we're in the clear in terms of robotics, just because you mentioned that particular class. Music last year, though, as an example, and art, those classes ran, I should say. I say music a little bit loosely. We did do music work, more with Ms. Iannacone, last year because we didn't bring back music teachers until very late in the year because we actually were under restriction to not have that in our classes due to the spread of COVID and how things were working last year. Again, we were trying to figure it all out, and I say we collectively as the greater community. This year we do have a music teacher, so I would anticipate, much like Ms. Iannacone did last year, that they will still be able to put things together. I know last year we did sort of a musical piece at some point in the year where they kind of put things together, so I anticipate that our high school teacher will continue in the best possible way. Art was a class we think. So those are the two biggies that come to mind. Gym actually ran last year as well. And so, we did many things through the gym classes just through video. So the big outstanding one there is probably robotics, but right now that doesn't begin until second semester if memory serves. I hope is that okay? Okay, you're welcome.
Okay. Mr. King, to his credit, has potentially a very big evening going on with the district, to put it lightly, not to undermine it. That being said, he has made it clear that DESE is looking for a recommendation of the Board of Health to support the temporary closure of the high school only for online learning to reopen the first day beginning after the end of Christmas break. So with that, we will now, if there are no other questions, leave it to somebody to make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
A second.
As worded?
As worded.
Because I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No.
Out of respect for you, I don't
No.
want to put words in your mouth.
I would have added more, but
So the motion was made by
Yeah.
Member Garrett Watt, seconded by Member Lionel Cloutier. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we will call for a vote. Member Cloutier,
Aye.
Member Watt,
aye.
Member Santos,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. You have your support. We're sorry that you're going through such a difficult time in public education that
Unfortunately.
many of your predecessors could have only dreamed of having to go through. So to your credit, we thank you for your dedication, the amount of numbers you brought to bear this evening, bringing validity to the claims, which are backed obviously by science through the testing the nurses are doing. Would you please, on our behalf, tell the school nurse or nurses that the Board of Health does realize and thanks them for their commitment to the children?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support, really appreciate it. Really, I think it means a lot to our school community, and I hope the families receive it well, but it's really necessary, so thank you very much, I appreciate it.
So with that, you will be closing schools, so children, forgive me, will not be going to school tomorrow then?
Correct.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
where will there be a code red call?
I'll have to,
Because I know the town manager's not in today.
town manager's not in, so tonight what will happen is we use Parent Square as our
Sure.
communication tool.
Sure.
The communication is already written. That will go out as soon as I hang up with DESE. That will be sent out. I will likely also do a phone call to complement that,
Mhm.
to go out tonight. The only thing I can do in terms of a code red is work with the town side
Sure.
when they return, but we can explore that tomorrow.
Yeah, the sooner we get this out to the
Yep.
parents, the better, because as we have members on our board who have children in schools,
Absolutely.
a lot of parents may not have, with two-parent working families, may not have a parent at home, and they're gonna have to make adjustments again to their work schedule, which to their, credit was never predicted that, or when it could happen,
And I
so,
think the best news is that this is high school and not
yeah,
Memorial.
Where they don't need
example.
babysitters.
The extreme.
hopefully.
The high school students, we
So
hope.
freshmen,
this-
yeah.
Yeah.
Will most likely, be a
That's the
little bit
biggie.
older, so.
Yep.
I mean,
If we were doing this at Memorial, it'd be a different conversation. It'd be a very difficult
Yeah.
decision to make based on exactly.
So I guess I'm pretty sure my fellow Board of Health members probably have the same sentiment, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we do get to the point where this needs to be at the lesser grades, that we would allow the parents some kind of a longer heads up so they could accommodate with babysitters and things like that if humanly possible for their credit.
We'd do all we could,
We
absolutely.
appreciate it,
Yeah,
because
of course.
it's fluid, it's not static, this is a fluid
Will the
situation.
teachers be doing the remote at home or in the
I'm
class?
currently working with the union to arrive at that decision. So, as you can imagine, this does have some implications across the district relative to, the different unions and how folks work. So I am working with the president of the union and the vice president to make sure that it's equitable across for all teachers.
Because if the kids aren't gonna be in the school, you're kind of reducing their threat at getting infected,
Yes, and
obviously.
and we didn't have any teachers positive today, so, we're not concerned about that spread. It was really the student spread, and I do believe it's, certainly it might be in school some, but I do believe that you described, Mr. Kennedy, is that I think kids are they're kids, right? They go home, they take off their masks, they do what they do, whatever they're doing,
Yep.
and it's spreading in that manner most likely. I mean, what we have seen historically is it's sort of moving through friend groups. As opposed to classrooms. So, you see, you can predict it. You look at the kids who are sitting up there together after the COVID test, right? You're like, all right, that one tested positive, there's gonna be another one sitting up there, right? Like, you just see them sitting together, you just know, right? And so, that sort of today confirmed for me what we had believed, which is it's a friend group type of situation. And
Sure.
it just makes sense, it's logical, that's where they're at in life, and, we probably shouldn't expect anything differently, quite frankly, so. Teachers live in different communities. They're not hanging out together,
Exactly.
here in Winchendon after school, if you will. So,
Well, with that, Mr. King, we thank you and we wish you Godspeed. Good luck on this and good luck also this evening, sir.
thank you much. Thank you all for coming in tonight. Thank you.
With that, I'll be looking for a motion to close the meeting. Oh, hold on, Health Agent has a
Motion
question.
adjourned.
No, keep on.
Oh, okay. Motion made to adjourn by Member Garrett Want. Would anybody like to second?
Second?
Seconded by Member Santos. Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is officially closed at 5:08 PM.